The Friday Five flies again with our co-host from the first half hour, the Admiral Bill Stubblefield. Bill.
Good morning, Rob. Great to be here.
The Badger, Michael Heights.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Joined in the studio by our attorneys, longest tenured member of our crew, Mr. Michael Carl.
Good morning.
Lawrence Schultz.
Great to be here.
Pull that mic closer to you, Larry.
All right.
There you go.
Most people don't say that to me.
Via telephone, Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti, live from the Greens of Oakmont.
Yes. Good morning. And it is green. They're getting as much rain as the rest of us.
Yeah, Pittsburgh gets a lot of, I think it was a few years back, the second friendliest city to skin. In other words, you don't get as much sun. Seattle, I think, was the only city that got more precipitation than Pittsburgh in the country a few years back.
I'd argue for Erie, but it may be too small to be on the list.
It's a big city, though. It's a 250,000 people.
No, it's about 100.
Like the greater
the greater area.
Yeah, greater Erie area.
That's
Actually,
what you say when your city's too small. Oh, the greater area.
For someone,
When you throw in Meadville.
for someone who spent a lot of time in Seattle does not get that much rain.
Mist.
It gets a lot of mist.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of overcast days, but it gets less rain than Atlanta, Georgia. So,
Thank you, Bill.
Wow.
Thank you for going out of your way to destroy the point that I was trying to make.
I was going to say earlier,
with
Rob,
Noah facts.
we don't need a Badger on set if we have Rob Mario on set.
Today is Friday the 13th. You know what the Fear of Friday the 13th is called, gentlemen? Bill? Joe?
No, before that, it's my wife's birthday, so be careful what you say about her birthday.
I didn't say anything. I didn't mention your wife at all.
Just be careful what you say about today.
Was it Friday the day she was born?
It was, but it was not the 13th.
Ah.
No, the other way around. Sorry.
How'd that work?
Come on. Don't do that to me, Larry. It was the 13th she was born on, but it was not a Friday.
As I said last half hour, lock up when he's done, John. Just take the keys and lock up when he's done.
It is my wife's birthday today.
She was not born on the 13th, though, just on a Friday. So
Happy
Bill's
birthday,
house,
Bonnie.
Every Friday is Bonnie's birthday at Bill's house.
I hate to see his bakery bill.
I need legal help here, Joe.
It's 52 birthdays a year. That's like dog years or something. I don't know.
Psychiatric help. Maybe.
Fear of Friday the 13th is called triskaidekaphobia. Bill, you want to try that one? Triskaidekaphobia?
Absolutely not. I'm going to sit in my little cave and be quiet.
Here are some of the more common phobias in the country. Arachnophobia is...
Spiders.
Right, you know that from the movie.
I thought it was fear of Iraq.
That's from Moran. Ophidiophobia is a fear of snakes. Ophidiophobia. Acrophobia, fear of heights.
Okay.
Aerophobia, fear of flying. Claustrophobia.
Fear of tight spaces.
There you go. Everybody knows that one. Agoraphobia. That's the opposite of claustrophobia, fear of open spaces. Social phobia, fear of social situations. Trypanophobia, you think there'd be tripping, right? But fear of needles or injections. Glossophobia is the fear of public speaking. Thanatophobia, fear of death. Hemophobia, fear of blood. And astrophobia is fear of thunder and lightning. I have come up with some phobias in the studio that I have with our co-hosts. And I start first with badger splatophobia. This is a fear that Mike Height will burst that vein in his neck and coat me with his blood during the show. Badger splatophobia. Carl Bidenophobia. This is a fear that Mike Carl will one day start to like Joe Biden and not ask during his Friday Five, who's the worst president of your lifetime? Torts mutophobia. This is the fear that Joe Ferretti will keep his mute button on longer than I do. Schultz ninophobia. This is the fear that Larry Schultz will get stuck on Route 9 so long he misses the show.
I suffered greatly from that every week.
And stubble Frenchophobia. This is a fear that Bill Stubblefield will remember he once tried French classes and try to break out a few lines on the show. That's my...
Don't worry about that phobia. That's not going to happen.
Bonsoir, Bill. Bonsoir. Anyway, with issue number one, Mr. Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti. Joe?
Rob, as we watch the news, and I know Friday Five does that religiously because that's who the type of people we are, staying up on events. We've noticed lately some perhaps troubling activities that are taking place on a national scale, and it has the common thread here, of course, is immigration. We have seen the arrest and now the indictment of a congresswoman who attempted to visit an ICE detention facility in New Jersey. We saw last night the crazy situation with a U.S. senator being thrown to the ground and handcuffed as he was attending a presentation by the Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. A Wisconsin judge has been indicted, again, over immigration issues. We see the streets of Los Angeles and the blending of military into law enforcement, local law enforcement, as they try to quell some of the uprisings and protests that are taking place in L.A. There's a military parade that's going to be marching through the streets of Washington, D.C., and the president saw fit to say that any protest will be met with, quote, very big force. And he said any protest. And then finally, there was a threat to arrest the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. The president was asked about it and said that he thought that Tom Homan, who's running the immigration security force out there in L.A. right now, that would be a good thing. And when asked what crime Gavin Newsom committed, the president responded, getting elected. So I'm concerned as you see this common thread of activities taking place regarding immigration. Are our federal folks, and including the president, getting a little too heavy-handed? I'm reminded about what happened in May of 1970 when day after day protests were taking place on university campuses about the Vietnam War and the fact that American troops are now in Cambodia. That culminated in a situation at Kent State where 4 students were killed, 9 were injured when National Guardsmen saw fit to fire their weapons 67 times at a gathering of students protesting the war. I fear that we may be heading down that path, and there may be a confrontation that takes place soon that we're all going to regret. So the question this morning, should we be concerned about this direction that is seemingly being taken by the current administration and their heavy-handedness, or, as we hear a lot, is this what the people voted for?
Bill Stubblefield, you go first.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, let me add to that list that you just mentioned, Joe. Part of the confrontation yesterday between the Secretary of Homeland Security and the senator from California was the Homeland Security said one of our purposes was to come in and root out and close down socialism in a city. Under our Constitution, I do not see that we have the right to define who the folks vote for in that city, whether it's socialism, capitalism, whatever the case may be. This is another step in that direction that I find frightening. Also, the fact that the Marines and the National Guard are going into California not under the cloak of Insurrection Act, but going in independent of Insurrection Act. That means they're limited what they can do. I think they'll be watching very closely, do they actually arrest anybody? If they do, then that's in violation of where they're there now. I do think this is a slippery slope. I think that our Constitution was very, very, very conscious that we had state rights, and we have honored the state rights through the years. What I'm seeing now is a infringement on state rights that we at the national level knows what's right, what's correct for individual states. We're going to ignore the emphasis or the action of individual states, and we're going to dictate what a state can and cannot do. I think that's a very slippery slope. I'm hoping the courts will intervene very quickly. I do not see any sign of that. This is going to play out, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Also, it's awful hard to gauge how the situation from the news media. There's two sides to this. One side that says there was very little, that the Los Angeles police had everything under control until the National Guard arrived. Then it escalated from there. You look at other news media, and it's just the opposite. So you're left with the impression based upon the news media in which you're watching.
Mike Carl.
Well, first of all, let's don't forget what created this immigration crisis was the Biden administration, and it's a large reason why Trump got elected. And he's actively responding to it, and there's no end of issues about jurisdiction and so forth. But I have total confidence that the U.S. Supreme Court will basically sustain what the Trump administration has done.
Larry Schultz.
Yes. The courts yesterday, in fact, issued an injunction against the National Guard's presence in this unlawful manner in California. Then an appellate court stayed it pending a hearing next week. And so we may see some action by our courts, federal courts, to enforce, that little thing called the Constitution that clearly divides these things. To make this a little broader, though, what nobody seems to be talking about so far today is the notion that they're not just going into elementary schools in Los Angeles, like they did a few weeks ago that started this whole mess. They're also going into farms in California, and in some cases chasing the migrant farm workers across the land as they try to flee from the ICE people. Let's be very clear. I don't know very many people who are not immigrants who are interested in working in 95-degree heat picking strawberries in California. For many, many years, the people who have done that work have been people of dubious immigration status. What we've never done, however, is arrest the people who hire them. It is a federal crime to hire an undocumented worker. So we'll go to, say, a chicken plant in Indiana, and we'll bring 10 vans to the parking lot, and we'll arrest everybody in there except the people who are paying for this crime to be committed. It'd be much easier and cheaper, and I wonder why DOJ didn't think of this, to bring one van and arrest the owner of the company and take him to jail. That would send a very strong signal, without wrecking the lives of a whole bunch of little kids, a very strong signal that we really care about illegal immigration. We don't care about it as long as someone's making a profit off of it. And if we think that we can gain a few points in popularity in elections by hassling brown-skinned people, their children, and their families, then we're happy to do it. To me, that's simply insane. If you're actually looking at stopping this crime, just like you arrest drug dealers higher priority than drug users, then you ought to arrest the people who are causing this crisis, and those are the businesses who are hiring these folks.
Mr. Height.
So before these protests started, that's exactly what ICE was doing. They were arresting the immigrants who are here illegally and the people who hired them. That's exactly what was going on. So to make that comment that we don't do that is is just wrong. That's exactly what was going on. And then the protest started. And what's the common denominator between all those things that Joe mentioned? The protesters, the senator, the congresswoman, the judge. The common denominator is they all committed crimes. Crimes. Just because you're a U.S. senator does not give you the right to come in and interrupt and start yelling at the top of your lungs against a public official while they're giving a presser and disrupting the whole thing. If it had been anybody else, they would have drugged them from the room and restored order. That's what they did with the senator. Same thing with the congresswoman.
What crime is he charged with?
That's irrelevant.
You just said he committed a crime.
Okay, well, we'll find out, won't we?
No, we already did.
Actually,
they let him go.
You're right.
He disrupted the meeting without even identifying himself.
Yeah, he did identify himself.
If that had been,
He identified himself.
Doesn't matter who he is.
Before they
Does
touched
not
him,
matter who he
No,
is.
that's not.
You're going to have to watch the video.
Just
Mike.
because you're a senator does not give you the right to go in there and do that. I'm a delegate. I don't get to go into a DHHR meeting and disrupt it and start yelling at things. They're going to forcibly remove me. That's what happens. You have to restore order. And you just don't, because you're a congresswoman or a senator, get to do whatever you want anytime you want. These people are going into agencies.
Crime and they won't. There is no
They charged
crime.
the congresswoman, didn't they?
Well, that's a different situation. They
Right.
charged nobody in the case yesterday.
They could have. I guarantee you, they could have.
We'll see about that.
Well, we will
As
see
soon
about
as they
that.
found out he was a senator,
The
they let him
judge,
go.
the judge who aids and abets an escape of somebody who's a criminal, that's a crime of which she has been arrested and is now being charged for. These are all crimes. And the problem I have is the left always making excuses for these crimes because of somebody's lot in life or their suffering makes it okay for them to commit a crime, or because their status, they're a senator, a congresswoman, a judge. It's okay for them to commit crimes because of what they're standing up for. Nonsense. These are crimes. That's why the National Guard was called. That's why the Marines are coming in, because these people are committing crimes. And you have a governor who is unwilling to stop the crimes. Just let them go. It'll settle down sooner or later. They're just burning cop cars and throwing rocks at cops. It's all okay. And it's not that they had it under control. The LAPD were nowhere to be found when all of this was going on and they were attacking ICE agents. That's why the National Guard was called. There is precedent for this. This is exactly why President Trump was elected to clean this up.
You're only allowed to attack cops on January the 6th. Bill, go.
Yeah, what was phobia from Mike Height earlier?
Badger splatophobia. Once the vein gets going.
It's coming.
Yeah, I would argue, Mike, that was not the reason that Trump got elected. I think Trump got elected because his opponent ran such a very, very, very poor campaign. But going back to the statistics, and I do follow some polls. Currently, only 41% support Trump's actions. Close to 60-65% either oppose or unsure. In California, there's something like 60% oppose Trump's actions. Those that are paying attention to what's going on, nearly 55% oppose. It's those folks that are not paying attention that are supporting what's going on in California.
You know, they did a poll of legal immigrants back in the 2020 election. Which policy, which presidential platform policy do you favor most in immigration? And President Biden at that point had a plus 32 favorability, 32 points over Trump at that point. 4 years later, it was plus 8 for Trump. That's a 40-point swing. So what's that tell you? The legal immigrants of the United States are sick and tired of the Biden-type policy for immigration. They wanted Trump to come in and change things.
Trump
What
has
we
some low
need-
polling numbers you mentioned, Bill, but he polls very highly with how he's handling immigration. Even those who disapprove of his handling of the economy, generally he polls higher on immigration.
Thank you for clarifying.
No. These numbers that I read are talking about California specifically. What's happening?
I'm talking about
right now.
immigration in general.
Well,
And the border.
Actually, I don't think so. But I'll go back and find those
Just
numbers.
heard the numbers this week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. But Mike, I had a point I was going to make. But I'm getting confused. Okay.
Joe, it comes back to you. And then Bill will remember his point.
I remember the point. Yeah.
We're focused on criminal activity. It is a crime to call up the Marines to perform domestic police services. It is a crime to do that.
It is not. From another lawyer, it is not. It is consistent with the duties of the President of the United States.
Mike, you know this well. Posse comitatus has been a law since the 1860s. It makes it a crime to call up the military to do domestic police work. It's on the books.
But is it domestic if they are foreign entities waving foreign flags that are committing the crimes in a U.S. city?
Are they foreign entities waving foreign flags?
Well, it sure looked like it to me. Why is ICE there if it's not foreign people?
ICE is not looking at the way.
To wave a foreign flag. Come on.
Oh, okay. Are you saying everybody that's waving those foreign flags are not illegal aliens? None of them are?
I don't know who they are. You don't either.
Well, I think ICE
don't know
did.
who
That's
they
why
are.
they were there.
But no, ICE was
I mean,
going. ICE was going out in to the farm fields, arresting people in the farm fields, bringing them back
In
into
the cities.
LA.
They were doing it everywhere.
They're doing it everywhere.
I have confidence the U.S. Supreme Court will say I'm right and you're wrong.
My point is just that we have to be sensitive to the balancing act that has to take place here. Calling in the military, the Marines, the infantry portion of the Marines, who know nothing about policing city streets, who do nothing but wipe out the enemy to secure a geographical location by killing the enemy. You have those people now suddenly performing police services.
And how many people have they killed?
They're not
Exactly the same
crazy.
number as the protests themselves killed. 0.
And
Unlike
what
January
my-
6th.
Yeah, what my fear is that we are headed towards another Kent State situation where things get out of control and people take a bullet. And I'm fearful that we have to ratchet this back some. Do your immigration work. That's fine, but do it the right way. Have due process and process these people appropriately, not at the point of a gun from a Marine.
How do you
I think
do it
that's the
properly
concern.
when people are protesting and interfering when you're trying to do your lawful duty as an ICE agent? When you have people interfering with that, and then you have a governor who refuses to allow the LAPD or local police department get involved.
Where's states' rights?
Where's this information coming from that the governor refused to do something?
Where was the
don't
LAPD?
understand
They were
that.
nowhere to be found.
They were all over the
They're
city.
all over the city,
They're
Mike.
all over
They had it under control.
Right.
They
No,
had
they
that-
did not. No, they did
Well,
not
that
have it
depends on
under
the.
control.
I said earlier,
When-
the channel you're watching, other channels.
How's it under
they did.
control when you see cop cars burning, when you see people throwing rocks and Molotov
That was
cocktails?
after the National
How
Guard
is
arrived.
No, it wasn't.
Hey,
You see that all over that city.
final minute, Joe. You get the last thought.
Well, again, it's all a matter of degree. I think that, again, my topic this morning was that I think we have to be sensitive to the temperature rising in this country to the point where we're going to be okay with the military in the streets of the cities of this country. That, I think, is a concern. That's only going to ratchet up the temperature more, and I think we're going to suffer the consequences unless there's cooler heads.
Trump evaded responsibility for calling out the Guard on January the 6th because he said he didn't have the authority to. It wasn't his responsibility to. But he did have the responsibility and the authority to do it in California? You looked at me with
Yes.
furrowed brow, Mike.
Yes, he does.
Why not January
But
the
he-
6th?
But he
Why didn't he call the Guard January the 6th? When his own vice president called and said, "I need help here."
included triggering event that justify it.
Yeah, I think otherwise.
But-
Hey, we gotta stop. You can rant after this top of the hour break. This is Talk Radio WNR Martinsburg. Fire hose in here during the commercial break to water down the crew. douse the temperatures going on in here.
Ferretti started stirring the pot, and he was not here during the commercial. It got pretty wild, Joe.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm safe in Pittsburgh.
Badger splatophobia has been a real thing in this last half hour. I'm telling you right now.
That's why we love them.
Yeah.
That's why we love them.
That's the Friday Five.
Fire's on.
That's the
We're
Badger
on
and
fire.
Michael Height's voice right there. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Michael Carl, longest tenured member of our crew.
Good morning.
Via telephone, Joseph Joey Torts Ferretti.
Good morning, folks.
With the full beard, Lawrence Schultz, attorney at law.
Good morning.
And with issue number 2, the Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Issue number 2 is I'm confused. Mike Height would say, what's unusual about that? But I am confused.
I was trying to hold back.
Trying being the
Issue
key word.
number one every week.
Yeah, that's right. 3 months before he left office, Governor Justice said that the road's prosperity is the state's best holiday. That it is a success every way you look at it. There are 1,320 projects that have, work has begun on all of them except 10. Secretary of Tourism said it's a boom in tourism is direct results of the road building. You may remember in 2017, the voters approved a Road to Prosperity amendment.
Not in Berkeley County, though.
Well, maybe not, but the state as a whole, allowing issue of bonds up to $1.6 billion to improve major roads and bridges and some new constructions. That's what we had until last week. Last week, our Governor Marcy said the roads prosperity is out of money. We're broke. There's no way to pay the projects we're working on now. $1.2 billion has been spent. Only $120 million will go to cover interest costs of the state bonds. My question is, if the roads prosperity money spent, going to have to stop all the work's been done, who is right? Justice by saying everything was great, the best thing we have. Marcy saying that it was not the success we've been told. Going to have to stop the project because there's not enough money. Are we receiving a snow job from one of the two? How will we find out? We have two governors, one back to back, one saying one thing and the other one's criticizing his predecessor. Mike Height, the legislators need to investigate.
Let's start with the Badger. You got the inside knowledge. What's going on?
Well, yeah, I would say that Governor Morrissey may be right, that all the money that was raised from Roads to Prosperity is probably already committed. I don't know if it's all spent, but the projects that have already been assigned to where that money is going to be spent, those projects have already been approved, and I would say Governor Morrissey is probably right that the only money left for Department of Highways in each year's budget is for maintenance at this point. And that's not to say that all the Roads to Prosperity projects are completed, but I would say that the money has already been allocated to those projects to finish up. Now, I certainly don't know that I agree with all of the projects in the Roads to Prosperity. There were some roads, I think the King Cole Highway is a questionable project. I recognize the need for some new roads in the southern part of the state, but there's no growth in the southern part of the state. So what is exactly what were we trying to do down there? I would say sometimes you need to bring back the industry, you need to bring back the people, and then worry about the roads. When you have growth like we have here in the Eastern Panhandle, and we're sort of ignoring new infrastructure. We're maintaining and expanding a little bit here and there in the Panhandle, but there aren't any new roads going in to deal with the growing population in the Panhandle. And I would also question parts of Corridor H. That's the road to nowhere, in my opinion. It's a great highway. It is gorgeous country, but there are so few people out there. I don't know why we're spending the kind of money out there. Why we should have gotten more money from the feds a long time ago. This should have been done years and years and years ago. I don't know why it wasn't.
Mike Carl.
Well, first of all, there's, given that Morrissey's it's now his job to, make these improvements as we discussed, that puts pressure on him. And I don't have any specific information about these, particular highways or the counts and all that. But I do have a strong impression of the competence and quality of the two governors, and Morrissey is way ahead of Justice. Justice was a horrible governor. He didn't pay attention to what was going on. He didn't sit in his office like he was supposed to in the Capitol, and all he did was fight a huge debt, personal business debt that he encountered, and that was his whole focus. And he was a horrible governor. So therefore, I would tend to agree or support Morrissey's position on this.
Larry Schultz.
Yes. Let me start with something simple. The name. The road to prosperity for West Virginia is not built of asphalt. It's built of education, more stable families, better jobs, and we don't have those things, and building new roads are not going to get us those things. So the whole thing is, to me, a bit of a misnomer at best. It's a misdirected issue, it seems to me. By the way, Berkeley Springs is getting a giant bypass around the town, so there's a highway project for you to laud and gloat about. In the meantime, our education system is 50th. That's the road to prosperity, not asphalt.
Joe? Sometimes I marvel at how Larry can turn around a subject to fit what he wants to make his point on.
Well, when you're looking at the wrong thing, it's got to be somebody's job to make you look at the right thing.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'll agree with Mike Carl. As Governor Justice gets further away in the rearview mirror, I think the perspective we're going to have regarding that governor and his time in office is going to, I think, also fade and be less favorable. But, I can only offer anecdotal evidence as I drive around West Virginia, and I do drive a fair portion of the state on occasion. I do see better roads. I see newer bridges in place. So I think some effects have been good. But I also see some very questionable expenses. Down on the West Virginia Turnpike, Interstate 77 heading towards Virginia, there are two welcome centers that were built down there at the cost of $25 million a piece. Now, these are gas stations with a couple vending machines, but they're these huge buildings and with a lot of empty space and a lot of high roofs that don't make any sense. But I do know for a fact, because I know one of the contractors who worked on as jobs, $25 million a piece for two welcome centers. I can tell you, we got nothing like that up and down 81. And it's, to me, those kind of expenditures were out of line, probably an explanation of where some of that money went.
Brian Abraham, who, if I recall, is a pretty well-respected fellow among you legislators, correct?
Yes.
Some of us learned that the hard way.
Yes.
You sound like a scolded puppy.
Very well-respected man.
Abraham came to Justice's defense and said that he didn't think that Morrissey was getting the correct information. And then he mentioned that the revenues on the interest on the bond were being paid by increased toll revenues. They raised the price of the tolls, and that money was dedicated toward paying the interest on the bonds. He asked that maybe Morrissey's staff reach out to him and get the facts as opposed to whatever line of thinking that they're putting out there. He called it 400 million 2.0. Remember when Morrissey had the press conference and said we're in a $400 million hole. So I don't know how much of this is miscommunication and how much of it is math. Mike, do you? and maybe
or how much of
posturing.
it is political spin, too.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know. If anybody would know those numbers and know how the money was spent and where it was spent, it would be Brian Abraham.
And he seems to think Justice is right on this.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of this is political spin.
Whatever it is, and may well be political spin, it could be not information being conveyed from one administration to the next administration. The impression that's been left, at least the impression being left by Marcy, is out of a 30-year, $1.6 billion program, all we have, we're out of money. So the bypasses around Hedgesville or the traffic circle around Hedgesville will probably not be done because it's out of money. I'm speculating now. So we don't have the money. I think we as citizens deserve an answer from someone, whether it is political spin, whether Marcy's, as he did before, trying to make his predecessor look bad, he did with his $400 million deficit, or whether there is legitimacy to Marcy's claim that the money has all been spent and we're seeing some benefit, but questionably marginal benefit. There's a lot of money, $1.6 billion over 30 years' time, and supposedly there's nothing left in the bank.
Mike, do you know if those Hedgesville funds are committed funds yet?
No, I don't. I know the project was approved. They said it was going to start even before Justice left office, but nothing really materialized. I'll be honest with you. I think maybe they didn't start the project because there was some pushback from the local citizens saying this is not what we want. And I know as the delegate for that district, it's certainly not what I wanted. And I don't think the citizens of that area that travel Route 9 on a regular basis, and Larry, I don't know, you can probably speak to this pretty well, if they thought that 15 roundabouts on Route 9 was going to cure the Route 9 issue. I personally don't. I think it's a much bigger issue, and it needed a bypass, much like we have between Martinsburg and Charlestown. It needed something similar between Martinsburg and Berkeley Springs.
Yeah, Mike Hornby just texted in and said, we're not out of money. It's just that it's been committed. Well, I'm just quoting what Governor Marcy said.
Yeah,
it's already committed. The projects are already.
But Governor Marcy said we're out of money.
Well,
as in we can't finish the projects that we're committed to?
In case we cannot finish the projects, we're going to have to call some of the contractors and say we're going to have to default. Yeah,
that's a different story. Yeah.
It is.
Is it safe to say, Mike, that Morrissey and Justice do not personally like each other? Would that be a safe statement?
I have no idea. I'll stay out of that one.
You turned very red, though, when I asked. Let the record show.
I plead the fifth.
I get the impression, I think Justice is still very popular in this state. I don't know how popular Patrick is other than he won the election for governor. I haven't seen any polls on his popularity, but I know Justices were high, and I'm sure he still polls very highly in the state. But I get the feeling that these guys are campaigning to switch office again.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I get the same feeling from time to time.
Right, so I'm not alone on that one. All
yeah.
Right. Issue number 3, we do go to you, Badger.
And I'm going to stay pretty much on the same subject. And my question is about the current governor, Morrissey. We're 5 months into his administration, and just want to get everybody's opinion. Is he doing a good job? Is he doing a poor job? How's the administration doing so far?
Let's go to the phone first. Joe Ferretti.
One beef I have with the governor, Mike, is the gamesmanship he's engaged in with regard to broadband development in the state. We are still in a situation where too many households in West Virginia do not have access to the internet. So if you've got kids at home, they have trouble getting assignments and getting work done. If you are a possible, let's say you possibly could work from home and earn income for your family and still tend to a ailing parent or a young child while being productive at home, you don't have that capacity. These are things that forget the roads and bridges. If West Virginia wants to advance into the future here, we need this broadband done. The money is there. It was already allocated by the federal government. It's sitting there waiting to be spent, and West Virginia can't get their act together. And what the governor has recently done is said, oh, no, we're going to change horses in the middle of the stream here, and we're going to look at Starlink, which is another way of acquiring Internet access through an Elon Musk company. Now, this is politics, okay? We have the ability to put the fiber optic in the ground and get people Internet. But now we're going to go down this path, which is going to delay this by months, if not years, to look at another means, another way of getting Internet access. And there are concerns from experts in the state of West Virginia that Starlink isn't going to work as well in a mountainous state like West Virginia, as opposed to having the fiber optic in the ground into your house. So I will be very critical of him on that. He needs to get off his behind and get this done for the state.
Bill?
Yeah, it's still early. I'm not sure, though, that I give him high marks for at this point in time. Let me give you some examples. One, he started off very rocky with the legislators. He was not as effective getting some of the things through that he wanted to do. Arguments have been made, or points been made, that as the session went through, that relationship improved. Perhaps it did. I don't really know. He has picked, I think, arguments with justice. One we just mentioned. The other one was $400 million. He started off by making this blanket statement that justice left him $400 million in the hole, and then come to find out when the session's over, we had $200 million surplus. So these don't really jive. I think he's playing to his base, especially with cultural issues. The vaccination is one. He should have backed off with the vaccination, in my view, because the legislators chose not to take action on it. The exemption of the vaccination chose not to take action. Then he invoked and said the executive order preempts an old statute. That's going to be resolved in the courts, but I'm not sure that's a battle that he needed to take on, which I suspect he very well may lose that. But again, another plan to his base on cultural issues. But the one that I think I have the most difficult with is I do not see that Governor Morrisey, even though he's a resident of the Eastern Panhandle, is paying as much attention to the Eastern Panhandle as I think he should. We're the fastest growing part of the state. We certainly have the probably the largest judicial component with our courts of any place in the state, with the perhaps exception of Kanawha Valley. When you put together an advisory committee to select to appoint judges, there was one representative out of, I think, a board of 12. I could be wrong here, but a fairly sized board. There's only one person from Eastern Panhandle, and again, we have the largest judicial component within the state, with the exception of Kanawha Valley. That, to me, does not imply that he's paying a lot of attention to the Eastern Panhandle, and there are probably other examples as well. That's the one that's most recent.
Mike Carl.
Well, I have to say I agree with Bill about that the Eastern Panhandle ought to be a major focus of Governor Morrisey, and it's hard to say that it is right now. The whole thing with the interesting interplay between, comparing him with Justice is, again, if something behind the scenes relieves Justice's financial problems, which are major, then I think the leverage that he thought he needed to get there as a U.S. Senator will no longer be needed. But then I think his fight now with Morrisey and dispute will make him want to stay senator, because he I'm sure he's believes, as many do, that Morrissey is looking at appointing himself if Justice leaves.
So he'll spite serve, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's a interesting, back and forth relationship, but still, Justice was a horrible governor, but Morrissey, it's too early to say that he's an excellent governor, but because of a lot of the points Bill made.
Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, to go back to Joe's point about the broadband, I have some personal experience with this thing. For a long time, my internet arrived over an old telephone line in Morgan County, and I had, shall we say, weak internet. Zoom was a challenge. And so I had heard about the Infrastructure Act and the federal funds that are available for broadband, and I called up Frontier, which is the company that is doing that around here, at least in Morgan County, and they made it very clear to me that there was no way that it was ever coming to my road or to my driveway, which is a half-mile long. And so I then had no choice but to get Starlink. And I did, and it works great. Literally 2 weeks after we installed it, I go down, and the road is blocked by Frontier trucks putting broadband right outside the end of my driveway. So to say that I am less than impressed with the way the infrastructure stuff is being carried out with broadband would be an understatement.
Bill, comes back to you.
No, it comes back to Mike.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
But I'll take it, Mike. I'll take it.
I
And I'm
know
going to
you-
go back to
well,
Los
actually,
Angeles.
You'd have taken it anyway.
Bill, actually, I'm going to agree with much of what you said. I think you're right. I think the Governor Morrissey got off on a little rough start with the legislature, but I will say that is also greatly improved at this point. I think there have been several meetings with the Senate and the House, and I think all three branches, or the two branches, are now on the same page, and I think things are moving forward at a good pace. I think all in all, he's done a decent job in his first 5 months, and I think he's on the right track.
That was not my major point. My major point of criticism. My major point was I feel that he's ignoring the Eastern Panhandle. What is your sense about that?
I would say there's a certain amount of that. I think that happens with a lot of governors. I think they get in there and they feel like that old adage, a rising tide lifts all boats type attitude, that if we fix the whole state, that will improve the lot of the Eastern Panhandle. And I, along with you, think there needs to be some focus, some dedicated focus on an area of the state that is the fastest growing area in the state. Now, I don't think there's enough focus here on the Eastern Panhandle.
Is it not only fastest, but isn't it like pretty much the only growing area of the state?
I think there may be two other. I think like Putnam County and maybe Mon are slight, not a lot, but slightly.
All right, Mr. Schultz, you are on the clock when we get back, along with Mr. Carl. Joe Ferretti joining us by telephone. Joe, welcome back.
Glad to be back.
In studio, the Badger, Michael Height.
Good morning. Good to be here.
He's a delegate. Attorney at law, Michael Carl.
Good morning.
The Admiral, Bill Stubblefield.
Good morning, Rob.
And with issue number 4, Attorney at law, Larry Schultz.
Yes, Mr. Trump now says that we have a done deal on China trade, 55% tariffs on China's exports to us and 10% on our exports to them. Do you think we do have a done deal, even though no written agreement is involved? Why or why not? If it turns out we do not have a deal, do you call that negotiating or lying?
Let's begin first with Michael Carl.
Well, it's negotiating. There's so much, and this is Trump's style, and I'm not a big fan of Trump's style. I'm a fan of his policy agenda, but not his way of getting there. And that's so I don't think this is a locked-in, tariff deal we can totally rely on or expect to be long term at all.
Very succinct, Michael.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Admiral.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. I cannot find any information about what was agreed to. They keep coming back to the that we have 55% tariffs on goods coming in from China. China poses a 10% tariff on the U.S. goods coming from the U.S. There's been a vague reference made to the precious metals, but only a vague reference. With all this hoopla that a great deal, what is a deal? I cannot find it, and I have looked. I don't know what it is.
I think you meant rare earth metals.
I did. Precious metal. They're actually called precious metal, rare earth metals. They're the same thing.
Oh, fair enough, then. Mr. Schultz?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, never mind. Mr.
Yeah.
Ferretti. I got my attorneys crossed up. Mr. Ferretti.
Well, let's go back and take a look at what was said initially when these tariffs were first proposed. We were going to get 90 deals in 90 days, and we had this self-imposed July 8th deadline to get deals done, or tariffs would go into place. So what we have so far, instead of 90 deals in 90 days, is we have a general framework of a deal with the United Kingdom and now China, which was just announced yesterday, apparently. And as I understood it, when it was presented yesterday, this framework of a deal is basically we have gone back to where we were with China just months ago. So I don't know what's been accomplished. I know that it was pure folly to think that we were going to leverage against the exporting superpower that China is. So much dependence in this country exists on China in terms of what we get from them on a daily basis. So it was a battle that we weren't going to win, and I think in the end we're not going to have any real tangible benefits here, except to be able to say that we have both gone off the ledge and we are now back to where we were, dealing with China, and much like they're dealing with us. But I didn't hear anything about, there's now a deal in place, they're not going to steal our intellectual property, or we're not going to be allowing them to export from sweatshops built with shoes built by the Uyghurs under the point of a gun, things like that. I don't hear anything about that. All I hear is that there's been a retrenchment back to where we were. So I think the 90 deals in 90 days, which came directly from the White House, is not even close to happening. And in the end, I think a lot of economists and a lot of commentators, including those at the Wall Street Journal, will be proven correct that this whole battle over tariffs was a battle that was never going to be won.
Mike Height.
Yeah, I don't know. Y'all make great points. We don't know what the deal is, other than the little bit we're hearing in the news right now, 55 and 10. What's the whole deal? What is it in writing? And in the end, whatever it is, whatever gets signed, is China going to uphold their end of the deal? No, probably not. They never do. So, is there really a deal if one side doesn't abide by the deal that they sign? Then, no, not really. But my opinion is that we need to get away from China as much as possible and the imports that we get from China. So whatever it is that we need and we think we need from China, we need to start looking at other countries and trying to buy those commodities from other countries, because China is not our friend any more than Russia is our friend, or any number of countries. So why we import so much from China is beyond me, and I think we need to get away from it.
Larry Schultz, back to you.
Yeah, one thing. I looked while Mike was talking, some of the meat to this agreement, and I could not find very much. One thing that Trump added is that we have agreed to let Chinese students use our college and universities, something which has been very good with me, with him being Trump. Yet this is one of the points that with the Harvard deal that Trump said we're going to kick all the foreign students out of our schools, especially those Chinese students. So he's made a reversal on his position of 3 weeks or so ago. No surprise.
No.
So, yeah, the biggest problem with this entire thing, and this is a specific example of it, is the uncertainty that businesses which buy Chinese imports in this country, and most of them are small businesses, but businesses that buy retail items for resale in their stores, their entire business model, a big chunk of it is Chinese goods, and those people are totally lost. They don't know whether to hurry up and get as much stuff from China as they can before the tariffs go up, or hunker down, try to find other suppliers for the same stuff. We've totally hammered those small businesses with uncertainty. And this is simply more uncertainty. When you say you've got a done deal and your name is Donald Trump, I think you're lying. I'm sorry. Especially on this topic, because it changes every single week. And so 90 deals in 90 days, that made me laugh out loud when I heard it the first time. They won't have 9 deals in 90 days. And the deals that they make will be subject to change literally on the whim of Donald Trump. So if you're a small business person who relies on Chinese imports for a portion at least, if not the majority of your revenue, you are losing your mind right now, because every week it's some new thing and you got to go completely recalculate and make a guess as to what the best move is. That's not going to be helpful to those businesses, to their employees, to their owners, and to their customers. It's not going to help anybody except somehow Donald Trump, because his dream of tariffs will finally come true.
But just because it's going to economically hurt to some degree doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We should not be importing anything from China that we don't absolutely need. And I certainly wouldn't call Walmart or Target or Dollar General small business. And that's who's importing the majority of this crap, and that's what it is. It's crap from China.
But they know they can hold on while all the other small businesses who are their competitors go bankrupt.
Other countries
that's
sell
something
crap.
Donald Trump really knows about.
Taiwan sells crap. Other countries sell crap. We can get crap anywhere.
Let me point out that none of the stores Mike Hite mentioned advertise with us, so it's okay to make disparaging comments about them.
But Mike, instead of looking at the Walmarts of the store, look at us as consumers. Us as consumers want these things that have been produced by China. You're saying that's wrong, we shouldn't do it. You tell the millions of people in the U.S. that buy at Walmart or buy the small stores the China goods because the product is good and fairly inexpensive.
I get it, but I don't need that extra pillow from my couch from China. I mean, I get they're selling it, we're buying it, but do we need all this crap? No, we don't need it. But as American consumers, we're like, hey, we got the money, we're going to buy it.
That's right. As a philosophical reason, you may be right, but as a practical reason, you're blowing smoke.
This sounds to me like Mike's angry that Pam is decorating the bedroom furniture with too many fluffy pillows. I think this is a personal thing between you and your wife. It shouldn't be the American economic structure that's at stake here because of it, Mike.
Is there a technical word for pillow fear?
Fluffophobia.
Fear of couch pillows. Yeah.
Fear of Pam if you disparage her decorating again. All right, on that we move on to issue number 5. It's Mr. Michael Carl's turn at the plate.
Okay, I want to throw out a question for the panel. Do you think there's any chance that the Democrats will retake control of either of the houses of Congress in the the upcoming mid-year or midterm 26 election? Now, there's only a third of the Senate seats are opened up, but all the House seats, have to be on the ballot. And do you think there's any chance? And what would be the influence that would lead to the very small, shift of majority to make the Democrats in control of the House.
Yeah, a lot of these votes are +1 or +2 in the House right now. And let me hear your odds, too. What do you think the odds are of Republicans keeping or Democrats taking? Joe, let's start on the phone with you.
Well, the modeling I've seen, the Democrats are going to have a difficult time making headway in the U.S. Senate. There's a third of those seats are up, and enough. It's really due to the states that are actually in play this next election cycle. It does not look good for the Democrats overcoming the 3-seat majority that the Republicans now enjoy in the U.S. Senate. In the House, that's another matter. And I think that one of the reasons why this budget negotiation that took place in the House was to help some of these the Republicans that won seats in swing districts, is to help them. That whole discussion about the SALT taxes in New York was about those Republicans that won some seats that had traditionally been blue seats. The idea is, can they keep those seats in this next cycle? I think the House could very well flip. History shows that in midterm elections, the party in power at the White House typically takes losses in the House, and I think that's going to happen this time. A cautionary tale, however, the next focus of the Trump administration coming up, where there's going to be more heavy-handedness, is going to be on the elections held by the states. Watch that situation going forward, because the Department of Justice is already flexing their muscles, asking for information from certain states about their elections. I predict that's where there's going to be another battle line drawn.
Mike Height.
Yeah, I would sort of agree. Actually, I think the House is the one that won't be as hard to keep. I think the House will stay in the Republican hands. The Senate is always a little funny because it depends on who in particular is coming up for re-election. And, if they're popular Democrats and popular Democratic strongholds, then obviously it would be difficult to unseat them. I don't. Joe, you seem to look in this a whole lot more than I have so far. And if you say that the Senate seems like it's going to stay the same way, then I'll defer to you. So if that's the case, I think the Republicans hold on to both sides.
For the past 20 midterm elections, the average loss for the president's party in the House is 32 seats. Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, I think there's something different this upcoming election that we've not seen before, and that is a genuine fear of how are we skating toward a threat to our democracy. You can, some may disagree with that, but you look at what's being perceived throughout a lot of the country. We have 1,500 rallies against no kings over the weekend.
Yeah.
15 no kings over the weekend. There is a perception that Trump is overplaying his immigration hand. Not so much that we have illegals want to do something about it, but the very overhanded play hard-handed play that he's using. And this is gradually eroding, I think, some of the confidence in are we dealing with immigration correctly. The numbers I mentioned earlier about what's happening in California, we're seeing this throughout all the immigration. There is now Trump's immigration attempts to address immigration is now underwater. More people disapprove of it than they do support it. The economy is going to key to inflation. Now, right now, the inflation, we're seeing inflation increasing by 0.3% on groceries and rent. The only thing keeping inflation under control right now are the gasoline prices. They are below inflation.
They were until last night.
Well, until last night. So that may change. But anyway, the last inflation cycle, the only thing keeping inflation low has been gasoline. Several economists say that we expect a fairly significant rebound in inflation come the summer, especially as we get to the second half of the year. I think these two things are going to make the determination what we do in 2026. And also, there's a third thing. There's I've used the word perception several times. There's a sense the Senate is not doing anything. The Senate has not challenged Trump on anything at all. The role of the Senate is to be an independent third party, as is the House. If they're not doing their job, will there be a pushback? We'll find out in 2026.
I think a lot of the answer in 2026 is going to be, if you could tell me right now what the economic numbers look like going into that election, then I'll be able to tell you exactly who has a better chance of winning. The uncertainty that we spoke about with regard to tariffs is affecting our economy as we go. And so if a recession kicks off, and remember, a lot of the things in the big, beautiful bill, should it ever pass, have been intentionally delayed to 2026 because the Republicans don't want to necessarily right away take the pain of this insanity that they're getting ready to pass. So what they're going to try to do is make these laws take effect in late 26 or maybe even after the election so that they can win another 2 years. None of that's going to matter one thing. One bit, if there's a recession. And if we have a serious recession with people being laid off, with farmers going bankrupt because they can't get migrants to pick their crops, with those sorts of problems popping up everywhere, then there could be a Democratic sweep. I can't say for sure what's going to happen, but I believe the recession will tell us.
Any comments on Larry's?
Yeah. I would say what would prevent the Democratic sweep is the fact that we're deporting so many Democratic votes.
That sounds like a 2020 theory to me.
Rob, let me add this too. With regard to the potential for dissatisfaction with the current administration and how that may play out in the midterm elections. I also see a concern. I understand foreign policy typically does not drive elections so much in this country, but with the world being on fire right now, Pakistan and India in war, we've got what's going on in the Middle East here just recently, and of course the disengagement that's taking place with the Trump administration and the Ukraine war. I can see some concern bubbling up in terms of how we're conducting foreign policy and how that may play into the election. And if we suddenly start attacking Canada, then it's really going to get bad.
Do you think that's a possibility, Joe?
I don't think foreign policy moves a lot of voters, but you can see now that there's a lot of conflagration out there, Bill, in the world. And the United States is the preeminent superpower, and we don't seem to be fulfilling that role in places that we should be.
Yeah, that's on a host of fronts. When Ukraine was first being attacked,
Ukraine started that war.
We needed support from Europe. I've forgotten the issue. We were able to get universal support from Europe, with the exception of Hungary. I'm not sure we could do that today because I think we have lost that influence with our allies that we had even a few months ago.
Mike Carl, final thought comes back to you.
Incredibly, I agree with Larry Schultz that if there's a recession, the Democrats will take control.
On that note, we get ready for final thoughts here, gentlemen. Final thoughts via telephone. Joe Ferretti, go.
Bulletin, I got word we're receiving new welcome centers on I-81 at $30 million a pop.
Swing. Mr. Schultz.
Watch out for rainstorms during the military parade in Washington, D.C. tomorrow.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Rob, good discussion today. I'm leaving more confused than when I came in.
Mr. Carl.
My slumping cards are rooting for the Pirates against the Cubs.
We're hot, baby. Mr. Height.
Hey, remember all the dads out here there this weekend. They work hard for you.
Finally, some love for the dads. Father's Day weekend.
That's right.
Dave Ramsey Show is next. This is Talk Radio, WRNR Martinsburg and TV10, and we'll talk again in 70 short hours.